Hi everyone. I wanted to talk about contour drawing. I talk about it a lot in my demonstrations, and I mention it a lot in my comments also. The importance of keeping your pencil on the paper while you're doing your drawing. And primarily, it's to get you to stop thinking about working inside of shapes too much and worried about small details too much. And it also gets you thinking about connections early in the painting stage. Right from the drawing stage, you're thinking about how does this shape connect to the one next to it, and that goes a long way in your painting process when you are entering with the right frame of mind and not seeing separations, seeing connections. Okay, these are examples, kind of funny examples of blind contour drawing. A lot of people, when they hear contour drawing, they think of just blind contour drawing. When you take a drawing class, a lot of times they'll have you just keep your pencil on the paper, and you can't look at the paper. You can only look at the model or the subject, and just kind of trust that your hand is following in the right place. And the results are often comical, but they're very artistic. I love blind contour drawing. Some of these look like Picasso drawings when you see this, but you can see the results that happen when you're not drawing your preconceived notions about how things should look. Okay. I think this is a good practice exercise for all of us. If you're just sitting around the house and you have a pen and ink, and a small drawing pad or something, it doesn't have to be people. It can just be objects in your house, and just kind of sit and practice not looking at your paper. Put your pencil down somewhere and really study the forms. Drawing is so much about paying attention to relationships and just kind of, again, getting over your preconceived notions of how things should look. I see that a lot in students' drawings when they're sketching out for their watercolor paintings. They're drawing a car and it's not even close to the car that's on the reference photograph, and it's because they're not paying attention to the forms and the size of the shapes and the angles, all that kind of stuff. They have this little image in their mind of what a car should look like, and that's what they're drawing. Okay, so when you can't look down at your paper, it's great eye-hand coordination practice to do these blind contour drawings. All right, this is a great quote. I'm going to be showing some examples of Charles Reid's contour drawings here, but this is in his book, and he's got a still life book, and this is in there. I just think it's a wonderful quote, and it just goes to it speaks to having some fun right at the drawing stage too. I love that. Just kind of contour drawing takes you on the scenic route. Enjoy your trip. And that's a good way to look at it. There's an easy way to do things, and you can just kind of keep spinning your wheels, or you can be a little adventurous. And I hope during the course of this year-long class that I see a lot of you making comments about how frustrating this is, and you're not making progress as fast as you'd like. And it's only been a few weeks for some of you, and some of you a couple of months, 2 or 3 months. But you have to keep kind of pushing yourself and push the boundaries. That's the only way you're going to grow and get better. Okay. These are some examples from Charles Reid's life drawing book. And so there's a little bit of a misnomer that I want to correct, I guess, and I'm guilty of saying it too, where it's just the contour drawing is just the outline, the silhouette. You can bring your pencil mark into the figure or the object too as you're doing a contour drawing. It's mostly just about leaving your pencil on the paper and trying to become more accurate with your lines and your forms. But you can see on here, the proportions aren't perfect when he does these contour drawings, but they're accurate enough, and they have a lot more life and character in them when you do these. Now, Charles Reid talks about when he's doing some of these contour drawings, leaving your pencil on the paper, and every time he gets to an intersection, he's coming up here, and this flows, and he gets to a change of an angle, and he stops, and he looks at the form, and he kind of pays attention where he wants to go with the pencil. And then when he does it, he does it fairly quickly, and then he gets up here and he stops, and then he sees the arm, and he'll just study that, and then he'll make another mark fairly quickly. So the lines aren't hesitant and shaky. They're very, flowing still, kind of curvilinear more that way, because he's spending as much time looking as he is drawing, and that's a very important part of contour drawing too, especially the blind contour drawing. You just kind of keep your pencil on the paper, and you're just forced to study the object, and you're not looking down at what you're drawing, what the results are. And that's what it's all about. Spend more time looking at the subject and less time, down at your paper, just kind of drawing what you think is going to be there. Now, obviously, these aren't blind contour drawings. He's paying attention to what he's doing on the paper to get some accuracy, but they still retain a lot of that free form kind of aspects of the blind contour drawing. This is another elegant example, and this shows what I was just talking about how you can keeping your pencil on the paper and drawing through forms. Okay, the line of her back going right through her arm on the drawing here. That's important, because a lot of times if all you're doing is working on the shoulder up here, okay, and you draw the shoulder and then you get stuck on the arm, and then by the time you draw all this on the arm down here in the hand, okay, and you've got that drawn, and then when it comes time, if you're not doing like a contour drawing, you get down here, there's times when people have the back up here and then down here it doesn't line up, okay. To find those connections by just continuing on through. Now, you don't have to go this dark if you're worried about your pencil mark going through, but just leaving your pencil on the paper and going through these lines and just finding that nice, elegant flow of things is just so important. There again, it crosses in front of the knee, and it comes down here, and this foot is in front of that leg, okay? It's fine, and you can always come back and erase some of those, but just you're going to have much better proportions, and things are going to align more correctly. Now, we're doing landscape paintings, obviously, but this also comes into play when you're drawing two sides of the street, and you've got cars on one side and cars on the other side. Instead of just picking up your pencil and going to the other side of the street, go right from one, the cars on one side of the street, go across the street and hit the cars on the other side, and they'll line up and be more in proportion. And here's another great example of this line, what I was talking about, some of these swirls in her hair, they come down, but the spine, and where does the spine kind of come down? There's a very light line that he does, and it comes down, and that's making sure that it lines up in the center of the butt here, and then this line here that he puts in here, just making sure the two sides of the torso line up also. Okay, all these little guidelines, just keeping the pencil on the paper. They might not show up on the finished product, all right, but even this line, just kind of showing the curve there of the cheeks that you've got, just to make sure you're keeping some of those things in mind when you're going in there and doing the drawing. And then when you get to the actual color painting, the importance of not overdrawing. Okay, he's staying on the big shapes, getting the big alignments in, and then this wonderful painting, this shape in the background, there's no pencil marks for that shape. He just paints this beautiful, elegant shape. It doesn't matter what it is. The only reason for that shape is to outline the arm, to have a negative shape there and show that arm. So if this was on this woman here, when you're going to paint this, say she had a white shirt on or something, or you've got a pale wash on her skin, you're just going to paint this big, beautiful shape, and you've next to the arm, okay, and you're doing the background shape, and that's going to help to define the light shape of her arm. All right, you don't have to get too carried away on using little brushes and painting a lot of detail. This was obviously painted with a pretty big brush. Very little detail, a few little color shifts going on in here, okay, and he leaves the blooms and stuff too, which I love about Charles Reid's work. It looks like a watercolor, okay, this bloom down here, I love that. How many of us would be comfortable with that? We'd be, oh my gosh, I screwed up, and then you try and come in there with a brush and fix it, or stop it, or blot it out with a paper towel, and you just ruin it. That doesn't bother me at all. That's got a lot of character to it. But you can see the contour drawing underneath the paint in here. He's approaching it the same way on this figure for his painting, just concentrating on the big shapes and the connections of the arm and the leg and stuff coming in here. And then when it comes time to paint, you don't have all these herky-jerky small little pencil marks that serve as mental roadblocks for you. You can paint big shapes. Okay, you're confident where your big shapes need to be. There's not a lot of detail in this painting at all. This is all simplified. His vest is a very simple, dark shape. His arm is mostly white paper with just a couple little brush strokes for shadows. Okay, and again, that random shape in the background, mostly just to define his arm and help to define his face. His pants are just one violety wash that connect into his boots, okay, and you're getting little backgrounds and stuff, but as you change the consistency of your paint. But very fluid, and that's what makes watercolor so charming. Another great example here of showing the contour drawing, as he's working this out, doing these free form kind of pencil marks on here. Again, making sure that the torso lines up so you get the angle, getting this line up here to show the buttocks and properly. There's a light line to show where the cheeks are, showing the foot. Okay, he's not worried too much about detail. He's seeing connections, getting the proportions right, working in and out of that shape, mostly on the outside of it, but where you need to, the big anatomy, just to make sure that you're getting those gestures correct, keeping your pencil on the paper. All right, and it'll work with landscape paintings too. Yet another example, very minimal drawing on this nude reclining outside. And look how many times he had to get that arm right. Okay, he's just kind of fixing it, going over it a little bit. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of adjusting, but it's still very simple, nice contour line here. There's the breast, here's the leg, boom, coming in here, the feet. All right, again, it's such a Picasso looking pencil mark. But that gives you the freedom. You don't have to draw shadow shapes. You don't have to draw every little bit of what you're going to be painting. It's so important to leave the shadow shapes and some of these beautiful simple shapes to your brush to be able to just paint. That's when you are going to start getting some fluidity in your washes, and painting bigger shapes and getting some color in there when you're not worried about filling in a pencil line. Okay, it makes a big difference. So draw what you need to, get it in there, make sure the proportions are accurate enough. Don't worry about it being precise with rulers and stuff and perfectly straight. It's more important that you have some elegance, and then pretty soon you'll find yourself just kind of being able to do this kind of thing. All right, a very simple pencil mark. Look at that shadow shape on his torso, that V shape. But without it, you wouldn't get any sense of the shadow on his back. Leaving mostly the pencil mark and just kind of painting a little bit of a wash up there on his head. This is like a Skip Lawrence shape down here. That exercise I had you do, it's one shape. Obviously, he changed the value a little bit, but it's the white paper for the light, and everything else in shadow is one shape. And who wouldn't look at that and know it was a little boy bent over, playing in the dirt? Everything you need to know is in that shape. So again, not feeling the need to draw everything out ahead of time is so important. And I love this one too, using some of the positive shapes on here, the arm coming down, but this shadow shape that he painted on the back and the arm resting on the ground is so elegant and clean and simple and descriptive. And again, I'm not expecting you to be Charles Reid, but I'm showing you these examples so you can understand the power of connections and big simple shapes. I keep harping on that, okay? And again, it starts at the drawing stage. Here's a little still life that he sketched out. Nothing in there is sitting out on an island on its own. That pencil stayed on the paper. Everything is overlapping, connected, somehow, some way. Before he even picks up the brush, he's able to have things worked out in his mind. Where am I going to start losing these washes? Another little example of a still life. Very simple, quick connected contour drawing, not getting into the details. I just need to know where my big shapes are, find some connections, make sure the proportions are starting to get accurate. And then when he comes in to start painting, again, it's all about being able to lose edges and find those big, simple, descriptive shapes, and let the beauty of watercolor. This is where it's so evident when these colors just, whoops, you're going right from that this gold color to this mauve to a little bit darker color, back to gold, back up here into purple, up into the background shape, connecting, and it washes back in again. All right. Losing edges, you can always come back in and refine, but there's not a lot of need to refine once you get some of the big shapes in there. And again, one of the reasons why I'm showing a lot of Charles Reid's work is just to show you, don't worry so much about, don't sweat the blooms quite so much. Some of you are like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't even notice. Some of you are pointing out blooms and marks in your skies and stuff. And I'm looking, saying, where's the bloom? Okay, it's part of watercolor. You're going to have that stuff. Just leave it in there. It's fine, especially as you're practicing. I have you working wet into wet a lot, and I know it's uncomfortable. But this still life, being able to do this still life is all because this is how his brain is working initially. He's not seeing all the details. He's seeing simple shapes, big connected shapes, starting to work it into the background, and just kind of defining it that way. David put out a post recently that he just started a new job and he's finding himself with very little time to paint. This is another great thing you can do. I know it's not painting, but you can still work on your skills. It all translates in the end. Okay, if you have a little sketchbook with you at night when you're sitting around, just looking around your house, this is going to pay dividends too. Just grab an ink pen and find a little collection of objects and practice just keeping your pencil on the paper, working on your relationships, working on connected shapes. Again, I know obviously it's not watercolor painting here, it's drawing, but you're still working on simplifying and seeing those big shapes. Okay, that's more important than anything, and it's definitely better than doing nothing. All right. Now here's a couple examples of Winslow Homer and John Singer Sargent, and you can see when you're looking in here, if you go close enough on these, obviously when you look back and it's small, you're just kind of seeing the whole part, and it all reads so well. But when you really kind of zoom in on this, you can start to see these beautiful, elegant pencil marks that he has on here, and it's the same thing that Charles Reid had going, this connection, even this little pencil mark going out here. But it's all these wonderful connections. Once you come up here, all the rigging and stuff, this beautiful little pencil mark here coming down, and it just kind of outlining the boat, the shape of the boat, and how does that relate to here, and then you come in here and get the barrel in. Okay, just keeping your pencil on the paper, keeping it nice and free form, and just trying to get some elegance in your pencil marks that will pay great dividends in your paintings. Okay. Another wonderful example, obviously, that you can see when you start zooming in here of that great pencil work that Homer had on his watercolors. And by the way, none of these shapes are perfect. I mean, the back end of the boat isn't perfect. Where it's hitting the water isn't perfect. This sail isn't perfect. It doesn't matter. I don't like things being perfectly straight and aligned. Okay, they're accurate enough. But they also have great energy to them. That's another thing you're going to benefit from doing the contour drawing. You're going to get these flowing, more artistic pencil marks that you're going to be able to use in your washes to follow you and guide you along the way, versus these overdone little scratchy marks. And it's going to cross over into the painting too. I want you to do one big connected shape on this contour drawing as much as you can, and then when it comes time to painting, grab a big brush. Don't make little pencil marks in your drawing. Don't make little brush marks in your painting. Okay, it's kind of obvious when I look at some of your paintings, and I comment on it once in a while too, in some of the bigger shapes, and instead of loading up a size 14 brush and painting it with 2 or 3 brush strokes, you've got a size 6 or a 4 brush, and you're doing it with 30 brush strokes. Okay, this big beautiful shape of the cloud here, again, getting the sky in, but it's mostly just to define the white part of the boat. There's not that much detail in there, but it says a lot. Okay, painting that nice big shape to show that the water isn't overwrought and overworked, and he's got some blooms in here again too. But once again, this shape of the water, it's connecting. The sky comes in down here, and it's going to come down here right into the boat, and it's going to connect into the water, and he just starts going into the turquoise and defining the shape of the boat. Okay, but it all comes back to the drawing. This is one of my favorite Sargent paintings too. for many reasons, but part of it is it's one of his watercolors where you can really see the pencil marks, and his drawing underneath the washes, the simple washes, a very quick sketch. But once again, you can see, if you zoom in closely enough, you can see how the pencil just stayed on the paper, coming down here right into his head, getting some of that hair down. That connects down here into the pillow, and it connects into here, and it right into the bedpost. All right, your shapes align better. You're going to start drawing better proportions if you just leave your pencil on the paper and make those connections as you go. It really does work. It's uncomfortable at first, but there's a big difference between, drawing what you think you see, and drawing what you actually see. And you've got to start working on those eye-hand coordination skills to make sure that your drawings improve. I talk about this. I'm one of the lucky ones that was kind of born with an ability to draw a little bit, and I've been drawing a long time, and I haven't had to work at it so hard, but you can get better at it. Even if you don't think you were born with all the natural talent in the world for drawing, there's ways to get better at it, and contour drawing is definitely one of them. Okay, so I'm going to close a couple of these out, and I want to go to a couple of the examples of the reference photos that we had for our module 2 here, and just kind of show you ways to tackle this. So now, obviously, this is a very complicated scene, and there's a lot going on. Many of you struggled with the horse. Some of you were getting the figures off to the right, way out of whack. They were way too small or way too big, whatever. Okay, but this is where contour drawing is really going to help you. So I have a layer here where I faded it out a little bit so you can kind of see what's going on here. But if I was going to do a contour drawing of this scene, hopefully you can see this okay. But don't worry about the trees too much. A lot of that you can just paint. I can draw a couple of the major tree trunks up here. But as I start here, I'll zoom in even a little bit more so you can see my pencil mark a little bit better here. Okay, I'll go up here and just start going around his hat. Get that little circle there. Come down here, maybe down by his hair and his ear. Get his chin. Connects up here to the carriage. Get this little shape of his arm here. And get the rolling, his gut in there too, I guess. Down here to the front of the carriage, that connects to his hand. Down to his knee and his foot. By keeping the pencil on the paper, you're just going to start to see some of these connections. Where does the top of the horse's head line up with the flowers? If I keep my pencil on the paper, I don't have the option of not getting it right. I go right from there up, and I start drawing the flowers. And I get the flowers going, okay? And where do these flowers line up with some of these bigger tree branches? You can even start to draw in a couple of those as you come in. Now as I come down in here, I have the tree trunk, and here's my carriage. And that comes over, this lines up about it, and it goes right to the horse's ear. And then we've got this shape, that ear. Okay, and the horse's face coming down. And then down here, my pen still hasn't left the paper. And just like Charles Reid was doing with his figures, you can kind of go through and define the shapes of the horse's belly a little better as you're going through here too. Let me scroll up here a little bit if I can. And continue on. So as I came in here, boom, and then you've got that horse who's just kind of strolling there, and get that leg in, and then get that leg in, and the back leg, and the front leg, and then where does that line up with this tire? Where does that line up with this tire? And then you got the axle. Here's a good example, like the woman's back. Some of you had the tires way out of whack on both sides of it. If I draw this tire here, and then just kind of go across on the axle, boom, that's the center of the next tire. Okay, keeping your pencil on the paper, that stuff really helps when you're doing this. And you can always come back in and erase it if you're not comfortable with where some of these things lined up, but it's going to make a big difference, and you're going to see not going to struggle quite as much with proportions, and things will just line up a lot better. Trust me, it does work. So if I turn this on, and you can see that drawing, there's my little contour drawing, and it looks very similar to some of those little examples I was showing you before. Now again, you can go back and lighten that up with an eraser, but just practice this stuff. It will help. You'll improve your drawings, and you'll stop worrying about the little stuff, in your sketches, and start paying attention more to the big important shapes in your scene. And even when it comes down to, once you're drawing this horse here, if I just kept my pencil on the paper as I was drawing this guy here and coming over, and then it lines up with this carriage, and where does it hit this guy's head? Okay, and then I can start sketching this guy in and just kind of follow that shape going in here. Now, obviously, you're not tracing something on your watercolor paper. You're seeing an actual, a separate piece of paper. But this is just how I would do it, and it does work. When you just, if I was drawing this guy and I go right over it and pay attention, where's this guy? It hits this guy right in the knee. Okay, and then where's this guy's head hit here? Right about at the shoulders. So you're going to start getting much better proportions in your artwork than you will if you just keep picking up your pencil off the paper and focusing on individual shapes all the time. Okay, one more example I'll do for you here. The Catalina boats, same thing, very complicated scene, a lot of separate shapes. A lot of you have done a nice job on the drawing of this one, but if some of you have gotten a little bit out of whack on your drawings, I figured it would help if I just kind of went through here a bit. So if I was going to do this one, same thing, just starting over here maybe with these shapes on the boats. Keep my pencil on the paper. I don't have to draw windows. This is what the nice thing about contour drawing is you start paying attention to some of the bigger shapes here, okay, and more of the outlines. Now, it doesn't mean to say that you're never going to go inside a shape like I was showing you in Charles Reid's things. Once in a while you kind of cut through to get some of these forms, but it definitely, you're not going to find yourself drawing windows and little incidental shapes nearly as much when you're leaving your pencil on the paper. You just realize you don't have time for it, and it's not necessary. Okay, we think that that's what's making these things look like boats, is all the little windows and stuff, but it's not. Now I come down here, join in with this shape. I've got the little buoy here, a little buoy here, get the front end of this boat on. I'm not picking this up at all. It's just continuing. It's like an Etch-a-Sketch here. This is fun. I love Etch-a-Sketches. Okay, maybe that's why I found my love of contour drawing. I just realized that. I used to sit and play on the Etch-a-Sketch all the time. All right, but just stick into the big shapes. Where's this line up here? There's a mast. Where does that line up with this boat? Okay, speeding up a little bit here for you, but you get the idea. And then where this thing comes up here, these rigging that goes up right to this building. Boom, there's my connection between the boats and the background. Then I've got this little road going up the hill. Here's a little house, another road going up here, another house up here. Okay, coming up, and then I can connect to the top of my mountain, and the circle of life is complete, back to where I started. All right, so if I turn this on, there's a quick little contour drawing. Now obviously you're going to want a little bit more detail than that on your painting, but not much. All right, everything that I need is on there, and the proportions are correct. By doing it this way, you're not going to have some boats really huge and some boats small right next to each other. It'll make a big difference, I think, if you keep working on it. All right, so have some fun. Again, when you don't have time to paint or do a painting or do one of these modules, there's plenty of other little exercises that you can do if all you have is 10 or 15 minutes to practice and honing your skills. And unfortunately, drawing is a big part of watercolor painting. You've got to get comfortable, with the drawing part of it, because as you've all found out, you're very limited in what you can fix after the fact. Okay, there's a little bit of lifting you can do and adjusting, but if your drawing isn't working, you're going to be more timid and unsure in the painting stage. And I want you to, make sure you're comfortable in what you've got down on the paper before you pick it up. So practice those drawing skills as much as the painting skills when you have time, and it'll all come together. All right, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Hi, my name's Andy Evansen. Over the course of this year, I'll be discussing a lot of ways to improve your paintings with a focus on watercolor in particular. Watercolor is a popular medium, but there are technical issues that can become stumbling blocks during the learning process. Painting becomes a lot more fun once you've solved them and can start refining your craft. I'll cover topics that are unique to watercolor, such as painting wet and wet, the timing and consistency of your washes, the importance of drawing and negative shape making, and more. I'll also be talking a lot about how vital it is to have a plan. The transparent nature of watercolor means you're limited in the amount of fixing you can do once you've started, and indecisiveness, that's what leads to the weak, muddy paintings. Because this course spans a calendar year, you'll be able to see me painting outdoors on location as well as in the studio. We can talk about the differences and similarities of both. I've taught dozens of 3 to 5 day workshops, and most of the time, just as students are starting to figure things out, it's time to say goodbye. This course through Tucson Art Academy Online allows me to work with you for an entire year, so we'll be able to get into things that just aren't possible in a 4-day workshop. As an artist who also loves to teach, I'm really excited about the possibilities of this. I hope you'll join me.